Hello, my knowledge thirsty beauties, and welcome to another episode of DP2daBrain. I am DP, and with me, another exciting guest to feed your frontal cortex. We have a veteran of the education industry, and also, more importantly, my aunt, Miss Keri Gregory. Give us the rundown. Who are you? What you about?
All right. Well, first and foremost, I'm a proud aunt of DP. I am 18 teaching days away from finishing my 25th year in education. I have been in 3 buildings, multiple administrators, many superintendents. I have been in first grade now, I believe, 18 years, and did a couple of other things before that. I teach in one of the largest districts in the Cincinnati area. We have a very high transiency, and we also have a very high socioeconomic struggling population.
And I think that'd be a good place for us to get into it because I saw a statistic somewhere that up to 70% of the academic outcomes are determined outside of the classroom. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
I don't know if I would quote percentages, but I know the difference that I've seen through my entire career is the more support and stability at home, mentally, socially, not necessarily economically. That doesn't
Sure,
make it
sure.
or break it. But yeah, there's a huge difference the way school is valued in the home, or quite frankly, not valued.
Yeah, well, and then I think you kind of start touching in some cases onto the pyramid of needs, where it's difficult for a student to focus on education if in some cases they might not know if they have food when they get home or this or that if they don't have a stable, and it's honestly it's similar to um really strong parents in like sports or whatever, like you're on the field but you can't focus because all you're thinking about is, so
Crazy
I
mom
don't
on
know.
the sideline.
Something like, and then for anyone wondering, no, I'm not trying to make an allusion to my mother. She was more than restrained on the sideline during
Oh,
my.
well, her sister was not, so it's all good.
Well, actually, kind of funny that you mentioned that because you're not just a teacher, you're also a mother,
I am a mother.
and your daughter is now in college, but so you began teaching before she was born, correct?
Correct.
My math is correct there.
Good job, first
Um,
grade.
yes. So, how do you think that having a daughter and having her go through her own academic journey, do you think that changed or affected how you taught or at all? And if so, how?
Absolutely it did, because I saw the effects on the student in the home setting. But more importantly, I think it changed how I interacted with parents and how I communicated with them. For example, very quickly after she started school, I realized at the beginning of the first week or two of school, a positive phone call must be made. Because if you saw, it's kind of a sales pitch, positive, negative, positive. If you call with a positive, I'm so glad, let's meet, let's greet. Then if you have to call with a problem or something that's not working well for their child, you have that relationship.
Hmm.
But it was eye opening when she started kindergarten and seeing it from the other side, because your instinct as mama bear is to react, and then also seeing, what your kid comes home and tells you is not always the truth, and I believe the opposite. I won't believe what they tell me. If so it's a very fine line, but yeah, it was definitely eye-opening to have a kiddo in public schools.
And you never got to teach her.
Oh, as a teacher, absolutely. You realize that you can't teach them if they're not ready to teach. You realize you can't teach them if their social emotional growling bellies aren't fed first. It kind of takes it more from the academic nature to the human nature, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And sticking a bit on food, I promise it's not because I'm hungry. Um,
Me too.
Nutrition in schools. There was the much controversial Michelle Obama school nutrition program, and um, the strong response there was to it. That's not necessarily what we were to discuss, but in general, how do you feel like nutrition in schools is in a good place? I mean, obviously, it could be everything can improve, but how far do we need to go? And or I guess how important do you think nutrition in school lunches are?
I think, well, we also serve breakfast to all of our kids. They come into breakfast and lunch. And I think it, especially that breakfast piece, if they've come in hungry your whole day, they're not going to be able to learn. Um, I think we have a very long way to go. I feel comfortable saying that, and it's not just my district, it's every district.
Sure.
We look at the breakfast, we kind of think, how in the world is this being stretched to meet nutritional guidelines? But in all actuality, it is. It's not what most would feed their kiddos, but they're getting something to eat. They're always getting a dairy, a milk. There's always a fruit or vegetable option. This year with the pandemic has been obviously completely different. The
Yeah,
building I've
yeah.
been in, yeah, the building I've been in for the past 3 years is a newly built building, and it houses upwards of 900 plus kids. So breakfast is automatically, it has to be served in the classroom. There's no cafeteria that can hold that. So that was quite an adjustment. This year, I'm getting bright. With lunch, we are very fortunate. My administrator finagled and figured out a way that kindergarten and first grade can eat in the cafeteria because the flooring we have is just taking a beating. Table manners are another thing we teach sometimes if the family hasn't. So
Mhm.
our kids are able to go to the cafeteria, but everything this year is prepackaged. They order their lunch at 9 o'clock in the morning. They have three choices now, two choices of a vegetable and a choice of a milk. Whereas the schools were designed to have almost a buffet style where you serve yourself. So they're getting limited quantities, which I know can be tough on the bigger kids that eat more.
Hmm.
And there's a lot less choice. It's either this vegetable or this vegetable. And if you don't like either, you're probably not going to eat a vegetable. Whereas it was almost like the salad bar where you could,
Yeah, yeah,
choose
yeah.
the best option for yourself. So I don't think there's any district in America that would say that they are on point with nutrition and what it could become in the schools. Absolutely. But that also goes with cost.
Well, and then to kind of kick on that, something I want to touch on later with standardized testing is I think you see in a lot of schools, I know I saw in my private college, a lot of food services being, contracted out to third party services. And then when you mentioned stretching to meet nutritional guidelines, well, you have those companies meeting with lawmakers to decide said guidelines. And
Correct. In their
so,
pocket.
so
Yeah.
anyway, but that's it's both a separate issue and the issue. But like I said, I want to touch on that a little bit later with the standardized testing monopoly.
Oh, goody.
Um, just in general, how would you say education um, has changed,
Over
generally
my
speaking,
over my 25 years?
yes.
Um,
No, they probably weren't paddling kids when you started.
no.
No,
No, never put a hand on a child, nor do I think I would if I had permission. There are some parents that say all you need to do is XYZ, and I'm sorry, ma'am or sir, no, I'm not putting my hands on your child. If that's how you parent, that's your prerogative. No, there is no physical
but anyway,
punishment
how
whatsoever.
how have things, well, okay, maybe specifically in terms of discipline, how have discipline methods changed in the last 25 years?
I don't know if the methods have changed. The kids have changed, and I feel like we are not spiraling up to meet what they need. I don't know what the answer is for discipline. I think when you look at people leaving the teaching field, teacher burnout, having to come in on a Saturday to catch up, I I don't know what the answer is discipline, but I think it is the number one driving factor of teachers leaving the profession, even after just a year or two realizing, somebody old like me, 25 years in, I don't have that luxury and my love is still with the job, but the discipline is the most draining, exhausting,
Oh, I
infuriating,
I worked with high
frustrating
school
component.
kids. I worked
Right.
with high school. It was a whole nother, yeah,
Yeah. And I think every
different.
age has their own issues. Like, for example, teaching first grade, the joke is kindergarten and first grade, we're kind of in the basement of a 3-story building because you have to have a special heart to do K and 1 because
Yeah.
their problems and their needs are very unique. But to be quite honest, we struggle with discipline. I can't imagine there's a school or a district that says they've got it all figured out because the kids are ever changing.
Fair
Their
enough.
needs are ever changing. And then with the pandemic this year, it's become different or enhanced problems with discipline.
Would you say there's more of an emphasis on positive or negative reinforcement?
Realistically, across the board, I would say negative. We're very reactive in this field because a behavior issue stops our effectiveness in a sense, essentially. I will say the building I'm in, we have a phenomenal leadership team, including our school psychologist, that even the last 2 years, the major focus has been, it's a PBIS, a positive behavioral intervention system, where we are, looking at any avenue to celebrate the positive. I can speak to where I currently am. We have a system where we don't, quote unquote, take points away. They earn them. So that's putting the responsibility back on them.
Okay.
Um, and and with little ones, I will be honest, there's a lot of what I call behavioral incentive. Some call it bribery. But, as their brains are developing, they don't have that internal sense of, doing what's right because it's right. And so you kind of have to model it. You have to lead them and you have to celebrate with, a sweet treat every once in a while or something to encourage so they realize that's what's expected in the world.
And you mentioned you keep mentioning wonderful transitions to all my pre-planned points, so thank you for that. You have a great school psychologist, and would you say that's something that's changed in 25 years, a focus or even an acknowledgement of the importance of student mental health? Is that something that's improved?
100%.
That's
But
even
again, I
wonderful.
will say it all comes back to money.
Mm-hmm.
Every solution that seems to be one that will make a dramatic impact somehow causes money to be used. But our psychologist not only does her job as a psychologist, um, she does not do the counseling piece, but she does the educational evaluations. She's in charge of our positive behavior intervention system team. She works closely with our state at different levels of recognition. We're silver. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I know in the circles we are proudly, although we're not done by any means, above a lot of the rest of the schools and areas and throughout the country, really. So we are on that shift, but it's a hard habit to break of you're going to lose a point versus you're not going to earn your point. But it's giving those kids some ownership. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the comment. It's your choice, not mine.
It's kind of a balance between determination and responsibility in a
Correct.
way.
Yeah.
And once again, touching on the mental health, I mean, even before the events of the last 24 months or whatever, I think anyone who's paying attention would agree that the most of the developed world is in somewhat of a mental health crisis. I mean, the numbers are exploding, not just with diagnoses, but with the underlying effects from them, be it in our opiate epidemic or whatnot. So it's once again we go back to the pyramid of needs. It's a couple steps higher up, but once again, if someone is dealing with issues, be them emotionally or mentally or whatnot, it's you can't be absorbing knowledge in a state like that. So I think it's very smart. It's, well, not just smart, it's necessary for schools to be starting that even at the young ages. I know, your kids might not necessarily be able to grasp a lot of concepts when it comes to emotional intelligence, but I
You'd
mean,
be
even,
surprised.
well, okay, most would, but there are some that might not. But
Correct.
just to even have, emotional intelligence is something that needs to be taught as well as
Mhm.
book intelligence and all that
Absolutely.
kind of stuff. So I think
Um,
that's all wonderful.
One thing that we do, in my current building is we do not teach academics the first 3 weeks of school. Again, it looked
Okay.
different this year, but it's like a collaboration of developing that family feeling, keying into any possible situations, whether it be in the home, the community that the child's having,
Or
working.
maybe potential issues between students before things
Yes,
start getting stressful.
or potential issues, conflict of personality, student versus adult.
Hmm.
So we spend those first 3 weeks with no academics. It is all the social aspect, the understanding the rules, not just being told what they are. And I think one of the most powerful things that we've done is teach, K to 5, the concept of their brain. We have this awesome little people video that talks about their hypothalamus, and they learn that, if they're in their downstairs brain, they can't learn. The upstairs brain is when they can function. And we kind of teach them strategies. If you're in your downstairs brain, how can you get up there to that upstairs brain where you can get knowledge? We talk about what downstairs brain looks like, what upstairs brain looks like. And then we are really big on color coding. Our kids have what's called a weather strip system. And it's as
Okay.
simple as I'd give you an example, but my kids have no name tags anymore. It's a 4-color strip. Green is sunny. You're feeling sunny, you're feeling calm, you're in your upstairs brain ready to learn. Yellow, and there's different emotions that we can attach. You're feeling sad, so you're yellow.
Mhm.
Blue is the sleepy, the sick, the bored, the tired. And then red, you usually don't have to move that clip. We can tell when you're feeling red because you've lost it and you need to go somewhere and get yourself back together before we address it.
Right.
And I admit at the beginning of the year, all the time, move your clip, move your clip, move your clip. But I feel like my main goal is not to turn out kids that can ace the 3rd grade reading test. Because with our state, I'll be quite honest, that's 2 years away. It could all change by then anyway.
Hmm.
Mine is to make little human beings that are able to function when they go to 2nd grade. So historically, I make the choice to work with kids that have a greater academic gap than many of their peers, and they don't know how to be at school. So teaching them, about their emotions, about where to go for help, making sure they feel they're able to make mistakes, they're able to ask for help, all of those pieces that a 5, 6, 7-year-old need to learn before any book is open to learn any academics at all.
That's smart. And I think the illusion of the downstairs brain. I'm just curious. Do you use the Pixar movie Inside Out at
We
all?
actually, okay, well, you know me enough. We have calm down corners, which again look very different this year because of, spreading the
Yes. Yes.
COVID.
Yes.
So in the past, it's literally in a corner. It's kind of cozy. And I'm looking at it, sorry. There are color posters like, and I made mine into Mickey Mouse, shocking. So
Mhm.
we have Mickey in red and it kind of shows the facial features. We have the yellow, we have the green, and then there's all these things in the calm down corner. If they need sensory of squeezing, if they need to put headphones on to block noise out. So this year, I was very fortunate. People donated money to me, people I hadn't talked to in 20 years, and I was able to make individual calm down kits. I don't remember
Oh.
what your question was.
No, no, no. Well, I mean, we're just having discussion. That's all.
Okay.
That's all fine and good. Um,
So they have strategies of where to go for what they're feeling. And it takes for some of them the whole year just to learn that. But if you don't take care of that, you can try to teach them letters, you can try to teach them to add, but they're not going to do it. It's impossible.
so would you say, like at the first grade level, the ratio of academic versus social, emotional, all that stuff is probably a lot less so than at like the high school level, for example?
Are you asking what it is or what I think it should be? That's a very big
I'm
difference.
sorry, I did not word that question well.
No, it's a
Um,
very different answer.
hmm, would you say that um, the academic aspect is maybe less important at that age than it is at okay, well, yeah, I guess that's the question. Do you think that you focus less on academics at that age, and do you think that is the smart strategy, I guess?
I think that is the smart strategy. However, due to guidelines from higher above, we don't have that luxury. What was first grade 5 years ago is now kindergarten. What was kindergarten however many years ago is now being taught in preschool. With the guidelines that we currently have, preschoolers are supposed to come to kindergarten knowing all letters and sounds of the alphabet. Whereas even when you went to kindergarten, that's where you learned that. The expectation now is the typical child should be reading when they go to first grade. And developmentally, that's not appropriate.
Well, at that age, they're barely even to the point of memories. So how can you learn anything if you literally can't remember anything? But yeah, I know, preaching to the choir, preaching to the choir. So yeah, let me go through some of my other. How do you feel about the coupling of age and grade? And do you think we would be better off if there was maybe more flexibility and we didn't necessarily and someone wasn't necessarily put in a grade based on their age? And of course we would have to destigmatize someone being older in a less advanced thing, but do you think we would be ultimately better off?
A
Or would
thousand
this
percent.
would
A
the only
thousand percent.
even with the do you think there would be social issues in mixing ages, as long as you didn't get like too.
I think if it was a uniform, we're not signaling 8-year-old out for being in first grade, or we're not signaling out the 5-year-old for being ready for second grade material, I think yes. Do I think our society will ever get to that point? I don't think so. I think it's been this way for so long. So you can ask your uncle, actually. My dream is to move to New Zealand. I don't know how much research you did, but New Zealand, they come to school on their 5th birthday. They start where they start and they don't move until they're ready. It's not you're 5, you go to
Yeah,
kindergarten, you turn 6, you go to first grade, you should be reading because you're 6.
that intuitively makes sense to me because
Absolutely.
with the current model, you have to shoot for the middle of the bell curve, but then people on both sides of the margins, your smart people are being held back, and your people who need more time are being rushed through when they're not ready. So, you're
Well,
hurting both of them.
you're hurting all three because if you're just teaching to the middle, they're not even being exposed to what possibly they could grasp at the top.
That's a
They
very good
also
point.
might need what was down towards the lower end because that might be a skill that they need to develop what they have further. And honestly, I will say, other than discipline, I think the I can't think of the word I need, but the
Discrepancy.
almost demand that because we have kids all over the place, even I personally think the younger, the more mixed you have. But I just feel like the whole concept of differentiation of instruction, it is exhausting. And I'll be quite honest, that's why I'm here today. I have a child who does not know how to write his name, and he is 8. And I have a child who's 7 who spent the majority of the year remote, came back in January and is reading on a 3rd grade level. So my job becomes it's not appropriate to teach to that average child. It's to meet every single child's individual needs, almost like an individualized education plan or an IEP for a child with an identified disability. I feel like every child almost needs their own individualized learning plan because I've never seen any 2 first graders exactly the same. It's exhausting. It's
You would
exhausting.
definitely agree with the I don't know, I guess you would call it a meme before memes were even the funny picture where it's like the monkey, the giraffe, and the fish in the bowl, and the person's like, all right, your final exam is to climb this tree. Well,
Amen.
the monkey's gonna do just fine, but
Correct. So we
and
have to differentiate our instruction, but we don't differentiate how we assess them. How is
well,
that fair?
well then I guess my question would be, how do we approach that problem with every student, approaching it with the idea that every student has a unique, you know, there will be, of course, crossovers.
Correct. Mhm.
Everything would be impossible if it were completely unique, but somewhat unique mindset with, whatever biases from parents loaded in, good or bad. Um, like how can we make sure that we're serving them the best that we can while also acknowledging the individual differences? What would you say would be the strategy for that?
I honestly don't know what the answer is. I can tell you what I try to do and what good colleagues that I see trying to do is and it's been very hard this year because I don't know if you can remember back to when you were in younger grades, but you would have these little rotations. You would have your little reading group, you would, do your seat work, you would go to a center, and of course this year all that was taken away. So it's been very difficult this year to meet with those little pods of kids that are on or near the same academic ability levels. To me, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a cynic now and I've been doing this for so long, but I feel like if you can prove that your child started August here and then by May they were here and they showed adequate growth, I don't understand how a testing company um, can make that decision and define who a kid is. We could jump on the bandwagon and say, not just teacher evaluation systems, systems for evaluating people in the workplace. How fair are those? You know?
No, no, I'll agree with you. Well, and then I think you touched on a pretty big point that I think it's time to stab that whale, the standardized testing issue. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised that both of us think that the idea is, um, yes. Um, I guess I would say that this all comes out of some kind of way, they want to quantify growth. There's this, especially around turn of the century as things got more data and digital and data driven, we wanted to quantify everything. Well, some things don't really fit into quantifiability. So
Correct.
um, it's definitely more quantitative in the educational. But I guess then I mean, how, what would be a quantitative standard of judging growth? I don't know, like, how would you, how, if without, if it weren't, if not testing, how would you know when someone's ready to move on to the next grade, for example, if we're not doing it by age?
So if we're not giving a test that, say, every first grader in America takes, how would I know they're ready for second? Formative data, summative data, pre-post test data, doing extensive screening when they come in to show their exact level where they are,
Okay.
looking at, well, I think we'd have to overhaul the standards of education, like the curriculum as well. But I think looking at where they start and where they come, we're teaching 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds that how they do next Wednesday when they take the first grade standardized test, that's who they are. Well, what if you didn't eat breakfast that day? What if dad went to jail that night? What if they suck at taking tests? What if they need more time?
Mhm.
And then we use that to group kids for the following year. And I'm like, but wait, or the kid that guesses correctly and they look like they're a genius. And you're like, no, no, they need help.
Yeah.
I just think it maybe at the older ages, middle school, high school, you can have a little bit more of that standardized. But I think I just think we are so all over the map with where we come K1 to especially. I don't feel like that is it's not even a
would,
fair measure.
would you argue that, well, I think you know the answer, you would argue that we need to, uh, tests themselves are not necessarily bad. Tests need to be vastly de-standardized. You need to be
Yes.
able to give basically individual tests to individual students. Now that's a little bit more work than anyone needs, not literally individual tests, but you know, tests that are appropriate for each student. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the Blind Side movie with the Michael
Yeah.
Sam story where, if it's written, he didn't answer a single
Mhm.
question when it was read out loud. So, of course, he needs to learn to read, but
Correct.
it's just an example of a different mind given in a different way. So you would argue it just needs to be, the standardization itself is maybe the issue. Would you agree?
I think you could have something standard. I just don't think the method we're using for kids this young, I just don't think they should be on a laptop showing what they know. And that's my phrase, show me what you know. I can, for example, somebody walked by, I was doing an intervention with a kid who has a very large gap between where they are and where they should be.
Hmm.
And I'm doing an intervention where I have a sentence strip and it has common sight words. So I'm pointing to each word. And when I got to a word, I knew that kid didn't know what OW said. I know the kid well enough. And somebody said, how did you know to decode that? Because I know my kids. I don't need, this data that's going to come 24 hours after my kid's test next week to know if they've grown or to know where their strengths and weaknesses are.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm getting a little
So
fired up now.
no, this is all
It's
good stuff.
heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking
No,
for
I
the
understand.
kids and it's heartbreaking for the teachers because that's how we're judged too.
Yeah, I know. And yeah, I mean, and I touched on this a little bit, you judged on your delta. So if you're already good, what are you going to do? Go above 100? You did mention um, kids on computers. So I kind of want to touch on this because this show has a little bit of a technology spin to it. And so kind of back to the question before, how have things changed in your 25 years? Two-part question, I guess. How have you seen technology be adapted into the educational space,
Hmm.
and how would you like to see it adapted going forward?
So I will say my first 3 years, I was not in a typical classroom. So when I went to my first classroom, which would have been year 4, so 21 years ago, first grade math, I think it was a blur. It was a rough year. I believe I had 3 chunky computers on a table. We went through phases where we had these computer labs with those desktops. We went through, you'd have 5 in your room. There was never that one-to-one. Now, very fortunate in my district. There are many shortcomings in any district across the country. But I will say, hold on, I gotta say that. I can't say it that way. Even districts that are viewed as much stronger and higher academics don't have a one-to-one with technology. My district, we are very blessed. Every child, over 9,000 kids, has issued to them a Chromebook. Is it the best technology? Absolutely not. Are there problems? Absolutely. But it's there when it's needed and when it's appropriate.
So you think you wholeheartedly believe technology belongs in the educational space?
I do, but I don't think it should be an equitable percentage of the day across K-12.
Okay, yeah, well, sure, yeah. In terms of, yeah, you don't want them on the
So
screen all day long, of course not.
So we just celebrated day 141 yesterday. 15 days. I've been in person all year. So 15 days, my kids who are in-person kids were remote. I was remote. It was a nightmare. I tried, I gave everything I had, but man, and it was common social media. It's like everybody, I feel like a failure. I think it can be used at this age to reinforce, to practice. But I don't think when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, technology can be used to teach you. You need that human interaction, that hands-on, because if you're sitting with a laptop, all you're getting is the auditory. You're not getting the visual really, you're not getting the hands-on, you're not getting the kinesthetic, you're just listening. And then add in a little ADD or ADHD on top of a young child who doesn't have a long attention span, they're not getting stuff from there. So my kids are on probably not even 30 to 45 minutes a day. And the reason
Okay.
they're on that much is because I have a very heavy support class and I have 1/3 of my class leave right after lunch. So we're on a program that is phenomenal. I mean, teacher picked, go figure. It's a great program and I can, with a click of a mouse, individualize instruction for them. And it's engaging and it's fun. But at the beginning of the year, it was, teach them to be on the laptops, do everything as you're online. And no, I'm an in-person teacher.
Well, I'm not even necessarily the kids on the technology. Yes, I mean, I think they have enough screen time at home that I don't think we should be too worried about that. I'm more thinking about in terms of how technology is used to instruct. Now, you mentioned
Okay,
you can create individualized lesson plans, and then it also, I would imagine, technology has made it easier to open up a line of dialogue between parent and school to keep them.
absolutely.
You mentioned how important it is to get the parents kind of involved in the journey from the first step, and then it's important to keep the parents involved in the journey just as much as the kids, if you will. And
Absolutely.
most parents will do that anyway. Some parents might just need a little bit more of a push. And I'm not trying to you know, down on anyone. People are busy with lives and stuff, but you know, sometimes it's hard to keep track of what, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that one.
It's
But
not always a priority in every home.
well, I mean, I don't know. It's just, you know, I can just imagine, you know, a single mother, three kids working jobs, you know, even doing the best that she can, she might not know exactly what's going on in the classroom. So
Mhm.
those kind of situations, especially when a parent is doing their best and, you know, of course, apathetic parents, there's not really anything you can do about, but the
Right.
ones who really care, technology has made it a lot easier in
Correct.
that aspect. And then something, the big revolution when I was in middle school, the smart boards, the projected, and then you could like you had the stylus that basically worked as.
Yes, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'll wait.
Sensor light, sorry. Yes, I had a smart board before I came to this building and it was phenomenal. It was so interactive for kids, the touch, the everything. When our new buildings were built, we have a whiteboard and a projector, so it is not interactive. And I think that took a lot away from kids being involved. You know, they can go up and touch stuff, but nothing's going to move. And, you know, the stylus, nothing like that. So I miss my smart board. That was a phenomenal piece of technology for little people.
Maybe, I mean, I'm just thinking in the future, maybe some kind of like 3D projectionary thing, you know, out of like Iron Man or something where you can turn it around and, you know, I
Yeah,
mean, in the future, that's
it,
far from unreasonable. So
absolutely. And
that's
think about
just,
how powerful that would be. I mean, it would be real life in the kid's face.
yeah,
Absolutely.
sure,
Why don't
sure. So
you
I
why
was
don't you
wondering if
work
there,
on that?
well, I was, yeah, it's just off the top of my head, but like, I don't know, just any of those kind of, I'm just thinking like going forward, technology, how else could that be introduced? So that's very interesting. Um, so a little bit what we were talking about with the standardization, where you said some standardization can be good. Would you agree? And I don't want to rehash too much on what Robert was saying, but he was making the argument that school is too structured. We put too much emphasis on the structuring. Um, I guess what's your take? Do you feel like, well, okay, I'll ask you in two parts. At we'll say at your level, which well, you know, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and then generally in school, do you feel like there's too much structure, not enough structure? What's your opinion on that?
That's a hard thing to answer. With the population that I have, I they crave a routine. They crave knowing what's next because there is quite often so much unexpected coming at them outside of school. They see school as their I come, I do this, I this, and there's no interruptions. I quite often have kids that even, you know, flip-flopping language arts and math will throw them for a whirl. But I think learning doesn't have to be as sit in your desk, learn structured. I think there can be a lot more um, different methods used so that it is a more relaxed, have choice as you're learning type situation. But
Sure.
for me, and it's what I need as well, so it works well with kids that are struggling either behaviorally, academically, is it is very structured. They know the expectations.
Okay.
It's never a surprise for them, and I think it helps with their accountability. They know that that's the expectation. They didn't follow it. there's a lot less resistance when you have to correct or discuss things with them.
Well, that makes total sense. Would you agree maybe that as they progress, a little bit of destructuring is appropriate, maybe? Like
Yeah, I do.
a high school senior does not need the same amount of structure as a first grader.
Not at all.
Um,
I think if
and
that were the case, they would not function very well as an adult in society.
well, you could argue that's exactly what has happened, to be fair. I mean, not, obviously they're not treating 12th graders exactly like first graders, but you could definitely argue that, you can make that argument, I think.
I think that's fair. I absolutely think that's fair. And honestly, this is horrible, but I don't know much that goes on above.
Yeah.
I have them here, and I focus and love them and teach them for those 5 years. And when they come back, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I don't, I'm not even sure I could tell you how everything has been working in my own district at middle school and high school at this year.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I
It's
mean,
kind of I got to figure out how to survive in my own crazy world this year.
well, I mean, I'm just kind of thinking from my own experiences. I was in that world somewhat recently, not as recently as I wish. And then I also, was working with high school kids for a little bit as well. So, um, I don't know. I just think in general, I mean, what you're saying about structure at the young age makes total sense. I just think as we get older, we have too much structure, and then once people, and then they go to college, and a lot of people are saying college is the new high school, basically.
Yeah.
So, and then most colleges at this point are very, very, very structured and safe, for lack of better wording. So once you finally do get out in that free world where there's no structure, you maybe, you know, we need to maybe teach young people how to build their own structure and not just rely on structures that are already there. Would you agree?
That's
To a
that's
certain
what I was
extent?
going to agree. I feel like if we are teaching them how structure looks and feels, hopefully they will have it within them to develop a structure on their own that is a positive and works for them. I agree, because you go to, well, not as much anymore, because you're right, everything's pushing up. Preschool's kindergarten, high school is college. But how many of the kids that were in high school and they were so straight laced, they had to follow every rule, they get to they get to college and they lose their minds because they've
Yeah.
gone from complete do this at this time to nobody's telling me what to do. You can compare it with like an athlete who's in serious training. They're told when to get up, what to eat, what to they retire, and they have no idea what to do because they've never been given the opportunity to be part of their schedule.
Sure. And I mean, I'm not even going to argue that the structure, there are some people whose natural structure does fit inside the structure that a school creates. But I'm going to argue that that's maybe like 10% of people, and there's a bunch of different structures. And kind of like you said, I don't think structure is the issue. We need to just teach people to build their own structuring.
Mhm.
And I think that needs to happen in that high school to college age. But if we over structuralize at those ages, then we're doing people in my age group a disservice. But but if we don't put structure in at your age group, then they'll never be able to develop their own structure at all.
Because they won't know what structure is.
Exactly. Okay, that makes total sense. All right, fair enough.
Well, sorry, I'm just going to jump back on this.
No, 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 go.
There's a lot of discussion, in high schools. They're not teaching how to balance a checkbook, how to open a bank account, XYZ. Couldn't we say some sort of instruction on, we've had you structured. Yes, they should be releasing some of it, but almost using that as a teaching tool. You've been structured. You're not going to have it anymore. Start releasing that responsibility onto the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
life skill. It's a life skill.
It is. I mean, and it's something that even as adults now, we still are developing our own structure and, modifying our routines or whatever, trying to develop and all that good stuff. So it's not like it ever ends, but it's something you have to kind of get the ball rolling early, or else, if it all hits you at once, then it's just a bit of a rude awakening. And We're
Absolutely.
dropping a lot of people into rude awakenings, which also combines with another thing I might want to touch with the overwhelming amount of student debt. People are, so a lot of people, Bernie Sanders and all those people, they're arguing for free 4-year college tuition, or I believe Biden's infrastructure, whatever development plan is going to involve 2 years community college. And I know you said you're not necessarily as aware of what's going on above you, but I don't know, just in your gut, what's your reaction to, I guess, A, the crazy amount of debt people in my generation are in, B, the inflating prices of higher education that are not resulting in a better product.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, it took me 10 years to pay off an undergrad degree, and that's been obviously, a year or two. Having a kid in college, it's breaking my heart to see that debt acquire. Um,
that's with
and
scholarships.
massive scholarships, educational and everything.
Same
Um,
for me.
I don't, I, I don't think college should be free, because I think when you do have that financial tie to it, you take more responsibility for it. If somebody gives you a free ride, is there as much accountability on you? Not if you've not grown that way. But should my kid, she probably doesn't need to watch this. Should
Hmm?
she have to graduate from her 7-year program, which she is now forced to go 7 years to get what she wants, be over $100,000 in debt when she's finished? No, absolutely not. But I don't think it should be a free ticket. I think it should be, I think it's way too expensive. I can voice my opinions on what we've paid for this year and what we've got during a pandemic, and it's darn frustrating. Um, I don't know
Well,
what the answer is.
something specifically in higher education that we're seeing balloon costs, and this is a phenomenon that I've been railing against in all sectors of society.
Mhm.
Um, the absolutely insane inflation of the administration and bureaucratic class.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
that's not
and I give the
higher
example.
education.
I don't know. We might have to cut this out. I think it's insane to think that the secretary at the superintendent's office can buy gets office supplies from the taxpayer, no question. You think the secretary at the superintendent's office has never bought an office supply, and nor should she. But how
Right.
many times have you bought school supplies for kids with your money and not taxpayer money? Taxpayers are paying for the same supplies for administrators rather than students. Pencils, pens, all that stuff is going to administrative buildings on the taxpayer while you are buying for the kids.
That is a fact.
And I think that's something that has been happening. What, like I said, I've been banging on about it. It's something that's happening in all aspects of society, and I think um, it'll be interesting to see once AI, the rise of AI, these kind of administrative jobs are really not going to be done by people. I mean, I think most institutions, if they really audited their administration, they would notice that there's a lot of ballooning and waste. But especially as AI is able to pass data 10 times faster than a human can think, you're going to see these administrative assistants and all that kind of stuff fall by the wayside. So hopefully we can see the costs get cut in that. And I guess that's all I can say on that. I know you're probably a bit limited on discussion of administrative and bureaucratic issues.
Well, I will say I don't know what goes into their decisions. I would never want to be anything more than a teacher. I would not want to be a dean of students. I would not want to be assistant or assistant to principal. Never would I want to be anything higher. So I truly say I don't know what goes into their decisions. But I feel like if there was more transparency, there would be more understanding. And I feel comfortable saying, now, first of all, my administrator is phenomenal. If you need something, she'll find a way. But it has probably been, I'm bad with
Oh, it's in
years,
the, and it's
5
nothing
to
against the
7 years.
administrative people. It's
It's
not the
been
people
it's
themselves.
it's been about 5 to 7 years before I've been given a tiny, tiny budget for my classroom. There is no allotted money given to us at all anymore. We used to get, a whopping maybe $100 to run our room for the entire year. You get something called a bid book where they found the cheapest prices. You'd spend your money, and then that's that. And then I want to say probably 6 years ago-ish, in order to be more fiscally responsible, that went away.
Yeah, but how many people did they pay tens of thousands of dollars to do the analysis that said they need to be more fiscally responsible? Anyway, like, I don't want to go too far down any rabbit holes, because then we get lost on the core of what we're talking about here. Switching topic just a little bit, and I want to get your take on this. So, I mean, any even moderate looking into statistics will show that a vast majority of teachers, specifically, once again, I'm going to use your level very loosely, your age group, vast majority to almost all of them are female. So my question, I guess, couple parter is, one, why do you think that might be? Two, do you think that is something that has changed over your time? And then I guess just, I don't know. I guess, what are your thoughts on the, and
Gender inequality.
I'm not trying to make it, I'm not trying to be like, oh, men's rights are being, not, but it's, I mean, it's a very observable phenomenon. So I'm curious as to your perspective on why, and if it's a valid phenomenon to be.
I think we are doing a major disservice to our students and our population. I don't know if in a building of 100 staff members, I could walk up to any of them and ask, would you rather not have a male? To be quite honest, and I want to say this politically correct, so I'm not like a tweet or a meme, but I would give anything to have an administrator who is male and African American. These kids need to see themselves in these roles. I
Have
feel
maybe someone who can relate to their issues.
absolutely.
At the younger age, there's not necessarily as many gender specific issues as maybe middle school, but there are still some.
I think
You would disagree?
I do. I would like to disagree with you.
Okay, yeah, no.
I feel like, what could we head off at the pass if one of my kiddos that is living in a home life that is putting him on that path, if I may just say it that way, if
that's appropriate.
if he has that male role model that looks like him, that has lived like him, who says we can't cut off so many of these problems before they even start? Or if just one kid doesn't go down that path, because we talk about it a lot with kids' books. I'm off on a tangent.
No, please do.
And it's very important that when you have of course the kids can't have books this year, but that's another story. It's important that you have
I'm saving all that for the end, don't worry.
It's important that when, like, you have a classroom library, you have mirror books where kids look and see themselves, and also books that are written by people that are like themselves. And you'll find that seriously lacking in kids' literature, which is just, it's a travesty. And it feels like you're pulling these constant stories because they're the only ones that say, hey, that looks like me. And I think that's the same. There's nobody in this building that would not give anything to have male teachers all over. The male subs, when subs were coming into the building, if they were capable, had nothing to do with their gender, but if they were capable and they were strong-willed, they were the most respected. A very large portion of my population is African American. And I know there actually have been studies done that the African American male is the least respected in their culture, because I'm assuming of issues coming from their home lives. To have that role model in the building, it should be half and half.
Positive masculinity.
Every kid, we should have males, we should have females, we should have, we could go into people that are transgender, we could say different religions, we could say different skin tones, we could say Persian, we could say, absolutely. It would be, if the whole rainbow was here. how much more could some of these kids relate to school?
Sure. Why do you, if you were to theorize a little bit, why do you think it is that there are so few males at, I mean, and at the high school, it's much more equal in terms of male female teachers. Why do you
Why
think
do you
that
think
is?
that is?
Well, oh no, I know why I think it is, but I want to hear why you think it is.
Why do you think it's more prevalent in high school?
Um, I think there's just generally kind of this, for lack of a better word, a meme. Well, I'm not using it as like the joke, but in its technical term, a meme is just kind of a commonly held belief or whatever. There's this
Mhm.
kind of meme that a guy who wants to be around small children has bad intentions.
Okay. See, I see it as it's a society problem because
Well,
if
that's what I'm
you
saying. That's how
right,
society
but
sees
not
it.
not necessarily in that disgustingly icky way, but just more of, let's speak openly. Well, you must be gay. You must be, you must be. What
Would
if
you
it's
say
just,
it's the same issue with male nurses?
oh, absolutely. Why aren't you a
Okay.
doctor? That's being a sissy. Absolutely. It's a societal issue. It's a stereotype
Nurses
that,
nurses do medical work.
uh, things pop into my head from TV shows. Somebody says, "Oh, male nurse, that's being a sissy." Well, it didn't feel that way in Iraq.
So
I'm using it to. It's
you
just,
don't think there's any you don't think there's any legitimate reasons. It's just
well, and I also think our society views the male as the breadwinner, and this ain't going to do it for you.
okay, yeah, yeah.
I
That's a
mean,
whole nother
the
yeah.
man has to provide, and to you have to sacrifice a lot for yourself and your family to be in this profession. And I think, and it goes along, I think, with a societal stereotype that the man must provide. Um, and you're not going to do that here. But I want to get back to the high school thing. Why do you think there are more male teachers at high schools? Truly.
Um, because I don't know. I just think the males. I don't know. People think that females are better with little kids or something. The connection between gender and little kids is my hypothesis. What you seem to have an ace up your sleeve, perhaps?
Uh, no, just personally, I do know some middle school males. I know pockets of people
Yeah,
in my,
sure, sure,
my
sure.
kids' world. They want to coach.
Oh well, you okay? Yeah. I
And
mean,
to
hey, I'm not
coach,
gonna lie. I had a
yeah,
fraternity brother just move to Arizona because he got a history gig, and he's like, and they're also gonna let me coach on the football team. So, well, okay, fair enough. Well, I mean, to be honest, I'm looking to reach out. Well, I'm only gonna be assistant coaching, volunteering, so I won't have to teach. But not that I couldn't.
right.
But so, really, you think that's a
I
really big
think that's a
factor?
very big factor at the high school, middle school level. But I also think there's that there's that view of the male is strict, the male can keep order, the male can, and not that I would ever toot my own horn or whatever, but you can put me up against anyone. My discipline will run circles around any man at the high school. So
Fair
that's
enough.
a societal stereotype I had to break. Like, oh, she has the
But
temper
you don't
and the
necessarily think there's anything like there's nothing inherently gained from having such a vast minority of men. You think it's almost purely negative.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. No, I mean I just want to I'm
Somewhat
just
similar to
that's
the
my
fact
opinion,
that,
but if I'm missing something, you're gonna be the one
no,
to know.
I think the gender inequity is, it's almost equal to the race inequity. Yeah, I think every kid that goes through school should see their gender, they should see their race, they should see every part of it. And I will say, my district and many others, they try. They will bring people on board, perhaps not for the right reason.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. yeah, I can see, but I can see that kind of it's a struggle where you're trying to do two things, it's a needle I don't know. I don't want to say
Mhm.
it's a needle you have to thread, but you can't you got to get them. I don't know.
But
Yeah,
people
that's
have
true.
to be there to be hired to fix this problem.
Well, we can go back to not that you need to, go on about it, but You know what attracts highly skilled people? High wages. You know,
Well,
not only do you not get
and I
paid
would have
well,
to argue in this position.
you're taking a pay cut. Oh, I've said it. I thought any halfway decent teacher is being paid less than their value. You have to be, I don't know if it's possible to be a bad enough teacher that you're actually getting paid fairly. If you're so bad of a teacher that you're being paid fairly, then you probably shouldn't be teaching. Would you agree? Would you? That's fair.
Can I give you some names when we're done recording? And it's infuriating and it's exhausting because here I am again. I am tooting my horn today because I'm tired. It's Saturday. I'm here. I got stuff to do. And then you have the people that walk in the minute they're allowed to come in late and the minute they leave. And it's
And
like, wait a minute,
I've
wait a
worked at
minute.
low wage places before. Yeah, I mean, when you're hiring anyone you can get, it's
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. But you just have to make the decision. Are you going to stoop to the minimum or be the maximum you need to be? So
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I guess I can't say that I know, but I'm pretty confident that your students have felt the benefit of the extra work. So even if they might not thank you at the time, hopefully enough of them come back and thank you afterwards.
I've had my Oprah moment, so it's okay. I had one come back on his high school graduation day.
Um, Touching a little bit on the issue of school choice and school voucher systems. I guess, do you have a take on? Well, okay, maybe I'll give my take first and see how your response is.
Okay.
So my gut reaction to having private versus public school, my gut reaction is concern, because anytime something like, to me, my gut reaction is, all the people with the money are going to keep their money together, get all the best stuff, and everyone who doesn't have money is going to be. And you could argue that's already what's happening with the way that public schools are funded through property taxes, is very similar. But I think that my gut reaction is that private school choice is just an acceleration of this. But the other side of it, which I see, what we were talking about earlier, how there's just such vast differences in how children learn. I think the school choice system, if done correctly, actually is better than maybe just like, would truly offer choice between learning styles rather than just we have all the money and it's great versus we have what's left over. You know what I see? So I
Mhm.
can see that aspect of school choice makes total sense to me. But then, like I said, my gut reaction is anytime money gets involved, rich people get the best and poor people get the rest. So what's your reaction to those? I guess the two sides of that spectrum.
Um, I strongly agree that it is a different kind of discrimination based on money. In my perfect world, which I'm getting tired and I'm not sure how much I can be part of the change anymore, is we we allow within our district. The district that my daughter went to was anybody could go. It was true free, open choice.
Mhm.
I feel like we could do a huge service to so many kids, not only based on, the style of learning, but, there are kids that go to school to play sports or they would not go to school. And I feel like that kind of things could be fostered early on. You could have, take away that word magnet, take away the word charter from schools, and you just have, and it's not going to depend on where the school is. It doesn't have to be, I'm just going to throw places, Indian Hill. It doesn't have to be over the Rhine. It just needs to be buildings that cater to kids that need whatever that school focuses on.
Mhm.
But yes, I think I'll be quite honest, and the kind of the running joke around here is, I don't know if you've heard of Indian Hill. It's a very wealthy area in Cincinnati. The Lindners live there, and just overall, that's kind of the view. And it's like, well, we're not Indian Hill, and
Yeah.
it's. I mean, I'm glad those children have so many opportunities, but I think it's very disproportionate.
Yeah, no,
Um,
and that's what I think a lot of the, unfortunately, and I think you probably agree with me, a lot of the people making the school choice argument are doing it in bad faith because they are the people with these vast resources and they just basically want to break away, if you will. But there
Or
are
they've
some,
never been in education at all.
that too, but there are some people, um, and I do understand, especially how we were saying the importance of, different learning styles. If done correctly, school choice is amazing, but it's going to be so hard to decouple it from financial,
Mhm.
and anything coupled to financial becomes financial discrimination for,
Correct. Correct.
in any aspect. So,
You can pretend it's not, but it 100% is. And I think that just perpetuates for example, the cycle of poverty. If you are born into a neighborhood that does not have resources and you don't have the opportunity to better yourself and, eh, go to the movies where you get on the metro bus and you go to that, much better school, that cycle is going to continue. You're not giving those on the lower economic status the the chance to advance their life. But I think you're also disadvantaging, I don't think that's a word, but those that might have everything in the world, because that's not an accurate depiction of the real world. If you can bring everybody together, imagine what could happen.
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Um, all right. Well, we have danced around it just a bit, so now I guess we'll dive right into it. What has the world of teaching been like in the last year and a half? What are some of the unique struggles, or I don't know. Break it down for me as best you can. How is since the world turned upside down, how are you educating children?
Well, I will say March 12th, 2020 to the end of the school year, I was just trying to be present for my kids, because imagine what we're thinking and going through and having the intellectual ability to understand as much as could be understood at that point. These kids were terrified. They're home, you know, when I hugged them and, yep, kissed them on the cheek, shouldn't have done it. But on March 12th, we had a scheduled in service that next day, and that's when Ohio shut down. I said, I'll see you soon. And that ended up being a lie. And that was horrible, um, because it felt, I was terrified they thought I was abandoning them. So we Zoomed, we tried. They didn't learn much, but they knew every day at 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock they could see me. My district did a phenomenal job of feeding our community, and they still do it every Friday. They feed the community.
That's yeah, schools and all that services that are feeding
Yeah.
kids during this outage are fantastic. I know there's a not to go on a tangent. There's a professional soccer player in England named Marcus Rashford who's been doing fantastic charity work over there and petitioning the government to continue school. But anyway, I don't want to cut you off too much. Please continue.
So we were not allowed in the building at all. It was pretty much you have till noon, take what you think you need. You may not come back, which does not bode well for people with obsessive compulsive disorder that really would like to, like, still my room's a nightmare. Um, we scheduled pickups where I was able to see my kids in their car, and I'm just gonna say it. I had all but one kid show up, so I did something right. Parents crying, everything. Never ever did we imagine. We thought that was the bad part. We never imagined it would be a whole nother school year. I never questioned if I would be in person. I confirmed with my family and they supported my decision, because technology is not my friend anyway.
Hmm.
Um, there have been, and people laugh because I have a little saying, there have been many baby blessings with COVID. And you and I both are not religious people, so that's just kind of a little saying I have.
Right.
Um, we have been fortunate, not fortunate. Our elementary school had the highest population that chose to start remote. So in my room, I started with 15 kids, which in a typical setting, you could possibly move mountains if those were ready to be moved. Um, we also have an assistant in kindergarten and first grade rooms full time with us, which
Okay.
financially never happens. Um,
Are those usually like college students or like doing
no, these
internships?
are the one I have, Baby Blessing. Love her dearly. We're trying to figure out how to work together in the future. These were friends that had classified status roles within the building.
Hmm.
So the person that I was blessed to get was what was called a Title I tutor. She was hired at an hourly rate. She does not have, an education degree. And then she last year would pull small groups and do a scripted program to work with
Okay.
an intervention type. So all of those people were pushed in. All K-1, and then um, I'm looking around, and we were 6 feet as apart as you can.
Yeah.
The rooms are only so big. They don't. My kids are very fortunate; they do get to leave the room to go eat lunch. Um, Recess is completely my class and me, which is a big change. Usually, they go out to recess, and there's aides and
Mm-hmm.
we've seen a dramatic decrease in behavioral problems at recess. So we're actually keeping the teacher
Hmm.
going out to recess, which, unless it's hot and humid, it's okay with me. Um, I think on one end of the spectrum, it's been phenomenal because my kids will stick up and defend and pick up and help any kid in this room. Because they realize they've got. We go out to recess, there are 4 rooms. You can't mix the cohorts. So I now have 17 kids. 3 kids have come back from remote. And I have some kids that are definitely special. I don't know. They take care of each other. And I don't know in a typical setting if that would have happened. Because I can go out to recess and play with XYZ. Well, no, you can't. You can play with somebody in here. So you better watch yourself. And I feel like we've had a lot less tattling and just annoyances because they realize the outcome is they're going to be by themselves. So it's pretty much it's isolated, which is, again, it's bad, it's good. I don't know what's going on in my world at all except in my little classroom.
Isolation versus solitude. It's a
Correct.
little bit of yin and yang. You got to have a little bit, but too much
Right.
is not
Right.
good.
I mean, we just like 2 classes together. um the way I teach had to change.
How so?
Very hands-on. If we're doing math and we're using, manipulatives, if I don't have enough to give everybody in a baggie, especially early on, I 1000 I admit I've backed off a little bit. They can't share supplies. If a kid drops their school box, which happens 9,000 times a day in first grade, they can't go help. And that to me is
Hmm.
hard because
Yeah.
that's something that is a major focus of my social teaching, like help each other, whatever, like help each other. And we
Yeah, it's got to be like because the young minds, they can't really take caveats well. So when you're like,
right.
you should do this, but not right now. You should
So
hug your loved ones, but not right now.
right. So I mean, we've come up with little things like, the school box falls and we're all like, wish we could help. So we want, they know that's the right thing. They can't. The
They're at
most
least activating their mind, the
correct
muscle. It's
that
not muscle memory of the mind, if you will.
Correct. They'll at least know that, that's a supposed behavior when there's no germs. Um, I I struggled since day one with the arrangement of my room. I very probably weekly say the 1950s called and they'd like their little neat rows back. Because of that, as close to 6 feet as we can.
Yeah,
I'm more
you
of
do what
a
you can.
cooperative learning, put the desks together. But then again, that probably has eliminated a lot of, he touched me, she touched me. I don't know.
What about
Um,
like trying to learn outdoors viable, or do they just get lost immediately?
we have done some, and I will say the upper grades are better.
Well, because
Uh,
virus transmission outdoors is much less likely.
Correct. I see a lot of, because we have that extra support person at times. I think every grade has it at some point. I'll see that support person take a small group out with their chapter books and they'll read. I've seen the older kids go out with their Chromebooks. I can't do that. Something's going to happen to a Chromebook. The biggest struggle that I know I'm having, and I think most of my colleagues at this level is the lack of books in their hands. And that's definitely had a very negative impact. My room would have the first day of school, 10,000 books from the public library, all the characters they know and love. So they get hooked on books.
Mm-hmm.
Libraries were shut down. They also can't touch the same book unless I disinfect it. You know, if we're doing, like, I can't do reading groups. I can't, like the thing I talked about, I can't pull a group of kids back to the table because they can't be 6 feet apart. I can do one-on-one, which is what we've done a lot of, and that can be awesome. But
Mm-hmm.
that takes a lot of time up.
Yeah,
Um,
especially because I mean, and I meant to touch on this before we got into it. Now, what's your average before all the fun? What was your average class size?
I am very fortunate. I have been in the right place at the right time my entire career. I don't think I've ever had more than 22 or 23. Now, I can have a
What do you
colleague.
think's appropriate? What do you think? Well, okay, let me ask what's appropriate and what's optimal.
I don't think any more than 20 in a K2 room is, um,
Appropriate.
it's not appropriate. Honestly, I got a little excited when our governor suggested class sizes. I hoped he would make it a mandate. It was 10 to 12. 15 was a sweet spot for me.
You think that's about the right
Uh,
enough
with
kids
this
to get a
age,
big socialization, but not too many that you can focus on all of them.
correct. And if we had, if I had had this situation, I mean, I think I've had 19 kids total this year, kind of in and out. But if I had even just the 17 I have right now with the full-time support, and I could teach the way I know is beneficial, who knows what could have happened this year? You know, my buddy
Yeah.
probably could write his name. He probably could count to 100. You know, it's just there's limitations, and there's a varying degree of caution from people. There are people in this building that say it's not real still. Um, I had to look at it as you asked the question about the whole parent connection as a mom,
Mm-hmm.
and a teacher. I
Yeah, I'm
had to
sure
look at,
there was all kinds of
could I live?
interesting.
Yeah, could I live with myself if something that I did or did not do brought this virus into my classroom? And up until about the first of the year, I would stay after school about hour and a half and clean on top of what was being done. I just didn't think I could handle if something I just, neglected brought it in. To my knowledge, I have one kid that was identified as positive, and it had a huge ripple effect. It affected 7 kids in quarantine. So for a couple weeks, I had 9 kids, and that was
But
pretty
they
sweet
were able to
too. But I
stop the
missed them.
spread.
Yeah, because it had to be like who sits and who lines, and like
Yeah.
everywhere we go, we had to be in a certain order. And but this could have been just the optimum year if you take away COVID. But then I wouldn't have had an assistant. I wouldn't have had, so
Yeah.
give
I
and take.
mean, yeah. Uh, actually, one last question before we jump into your big 3 wishes. Maybe a little bit on the lighter side. At the at your first grade level, have you had any fun stories of young love?
Young love. I currently have one little boy that is obsessed with one little girl. And
Has there ever been a reciprocal, or is it always one way?
no, it's just annoyingly weird. I'm like,
Well, I'm not
honey,
even talking this one. I'm just saying in your
no, it's
25
just
years.
no, not really. And I've taught as high as third, and from the first time I hear it, I shut it down. We don't do that at school. We're friends. Move on.
Fair
No,
enough.
enough. Yeah,
I was just curious if you had any funny stories.
well, I've got funny stories, but not many about that.
Oh, okay. Anyway. Okay, so you have just rubbed the education genie, and out from the lamp he comes. Rest in peace to Robin Williams. You
Mm,
have 3 wishes to make education, to improve education as much as you can with 3 wishes. What would your 3 wishes be?
Um, I'm going to go with the obvious number one, unlimited funding for what kids actually need.
Fair enough.
Number two, I'd like an explanation of why we're the enemy, and I'd like to figure out how to get societal respect back as a whole.
I'm sorry, I don't. Who,
Oh,
the enemy?
it's always our fault. We were heroes in 2020 for about 2 months. And then it was us that didn't want to come back, us that won't do this. Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
it's a beat
I
down.
understand. Okay.
I'd like to understand why. And I think going along with that, this is going to be at 2.2 because I want another
That's
wish.
fine.
The fact that a warm body is not enough. I think if you're not in it for the right reasons, if you're not cutting it in any other career arena, you would lose your job. And I feel like we're so afraid of not having the bodies, we keep bodies around. And it brings down morale. It's excruciatingly frustrating. And I think it feeds into the all teachers suck. And that as I get older and I've done this, I'm just very tired of being lumped into the all category.
Yeah.
It's like when your whole staff or your whole company gets the email and it's aimed at one person over and over, and you're like, dude, just go tell her,
I get tired of hearing how much of airheads millennials are and all this stuff. So
Or dumb
similar
blondes.
but different.
Yeah.
Similar but different. Yeah.
And my third would be the ability to immediately know a child's ability, whether that be IQ or something like that, and immediately know without having to dig and ask and research how to best reach their needs.
Hmm.
But I
Okay.
need to add another one.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The genie's in a good mood.
Oh, excellent. Again, resting from the wounds. I don't understand why the rules keep changing for teacher retirement. They are trapping us into, if you do your job well, after 25, 30 years, you're exhausted. And I don't think it's right to force financially held overheads, force teachers to remain in this career just in order to, when they finally do retire, be able to survive.
Okay, fair enough. And is
When
that
I started, you could retire after 25 years and get an acceptable percentage of your last or your 3 highest years of income. The way I'm looking at it now, I have to go 38 years to be able to survive when I retire. And
now
that's
does that decision come from the superintendent level or the legislative level?
legislative, STRS. Write your representatives, please. I think you'd have a lot less burnout. I think you'd have a lot less people give it 1,000%. It's hard to dole out 1,000% for 38 years.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I'm tired and I'm old.
Maybe I'll add another little perspective wish, because this is something that was gnawing in the back of my head that I meant to bring up earlier when you were mentioning you wish there was more transparency in the decisions of the administration. That's one of your wishes, more. So, and I was kind of thinking, well, maybe you won't. Would you want more than maybe just transparency? What if it was some kind of like almost similar to a shareholder situation where each teacher has one vote, if you will, and the administration gets like 300 votes or whatever. But if there's
Right.
200, what if there was some kind of where each teacher would get some kind of, what would you think of teachers getting more input into these decisions? And how might be a good way to do that?
Well, let me counter that with a question before I answer that.
Go ahead.
So, from the outside, where do you see the workforce in education? Like who is performing that field of whatever you want to call it?
Oh, the teacher's doing all the work, and then we have twice as many. We have administrators making twice as much.
So isn't that just kind of idiotic?
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
To have power, I don't even know what that would be like at all. We started this without the recording on because I said there are things I can't say.
Yeah.
And I should be able to say them. I've committed 25 years of my life to this district. I've been loyal. I've worked my ass off, but gotta be careful what I say.
Would you say that's another wish the teachers could? I don't know. How would you even? How I don't know. I don't even know how to say that. You wish teachers had, okay, I guess the
I
best
wish
way to
we
say
had a
it,
voice. I
wish
wish
you
we
had a
had a
voice.
voice.
There you go. That easy. Yeah, you should have a voice. Yeah,
The kids do.
have a voice. I mean, in all capacities and contexts, you know, you have a voice. Obviously, you are the main voice in the classroom, but
Mhm.
you know, you should have a voice with the parents. You should have a voice
Right.
with, you know, all the way up to, you should, you know, maybe you should be having voices with legislatures. Maybe legislatures should have consultations with, and I don't want to go too far or, you know, touch on the political powers of the U word. That's a whole separate issue. Um, when it comes to law and legislation and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the fact that the people who, you know, then this was one of the main things, and I think that's why you kind of jumped at the chance to be on. I remember I texted you and asked if you were interested, and you said, "Oh, talking to someone in education about education, what a crazy idea." So, you know, I like to get the actual thing. If I had some administrator on here, I would have heard, "Well, we're doing every," you know, I would have gotten some PR speak nonsense.
Right.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, and
I
I'm nothing against those people. They didn't create the system, but
right.
they're in it. So,
It is definitely trickle down. I actually had a Facebook memory pop up not too long ago, and it was not our current governor, but the former governor. Um, and it said something along the lines of, "Just come spend one day with me." You know, people always joke, you know, "Come spend a week with a teacher." You don't need a week. Just come spend a day with me. You know, it kind of parallels to, we have people making decisions. I have a child who has needs that are not being met, and the decision of what this child needs is being made on somebody who hasn't stepped foot in this building all year. Okay. So it's not just power, it would be like professional respect.
no, and that's once again, this is what I'm constantly railing against. That, I mean, and you made the excellent point. Who's actually doing the work? The administrators, other than, you know, insurance companies or some very obtuse, you know, consultations, all of which are industries that will be destroyed by AI.
Mhm.
Um, they're never the ones doing the work, but they're somehow always the ones getting the money.
Well, I do, just, you know, in case you get a million followers and my current, you know, evaluator sees this, I will honestly say I have never worked for a principal that I respect as much as my current boss. There's nothing she would ask us to do that she wouldn't do herself. Perfect example. We opened new buildings. They were not ready. There is mud everywhere. We're trying to have an open house, community news, whatever. She's out there with a push broom cleaning mud. Um, and as you go up the ladder, your hands are tied. Her hands are tied. It's just, it's a top down problem.
Yeah, yeah. Would you say even it goes all the way up to the Department of Education at the federal level? Do you think? Well, I mean, I know there's some people who would want to completely eliminate the Department of Education. Do you? You know, you would rather,
No,
but
you have to have some type of
but it
governing
needs
body.
drastic reform, in your opinion.
Yes, and again, not a religious woman, but my prayers are, we have a first lady. Can she do something? She has a platform that could change our country. We'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, you saw what happened when they just tried to make the food a little bit healthier. So
Yep.
once again, I'm trying not to go down that rabbit hole too much. Oh, totally random though. My mom doesn't agree. Doesn't Mike DeWine kind of look like a really old Matthew Broderick?
Totally.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Thank you.
his main interpreter looks like, and you're probably gonna have to Google this, the church lady from Saturday Night Live. Google it. It was his little interpreter, who, by the way, is the only deaf interpreter in the state of Ohio.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was fascinating to me.
Church Lady SNL. Yeah, that's before. I'd say it's before my time watching SNL, but I never really watched SNL.
It is probably long ago, but yeah. No, he is a shriveled up Matthew Broderick, and his hearing impaired interpreter is the church lady from Saturday Night Live.
All right. Well, I always like to finish up on. I have a very long list of various introspective questions. I've started narrowing them down I'm selecting ones beforehand so that we don't keep getting, because I've noticed that people seem to pick the same numbers when you say pick 1 through 100. It's always 17, 23, 7, 12. So I've started picking ones out that haven't been done. So if you would do me a favor and pick a number 1 through 10.
I'll be a first grader. 84? 7.
7. All right, which corresponds to question 26, which is...
Do I have the ability to veto one if I don't like it?
If you want, yeah. I mean, this one's actually a pretty short one, so we might have time for another one. Would you be immortal if you could? Why or why not?
In my current state, no. If I could go back in time and find like the optimal me, perhaps.
Could you expand on that a bit? Maybe more
I'm going to need
useful
the
version
mental
of
health
yourself.
I don't, well, and that's an answer based on where I am right this moment, which is a very stressful time. I don't feel I am exactly who I should be right now in all aspects of my life. Like I need to be a better teacher. I still need to be a better teacher, better wife, better mother.
But if you had infinite amount of time, couldn't you develop yourself into that person? You wouldn't need to be that person already when you became immortal. If you were immortal, you have infinite time.
That's
so if
true.
you have infinite time, you don't need to, you have all the time to become the you want to be.
But if I was that person in the past, it'd be a lot less work. Sure. And then I could just coast.
Sure. Well, I mean,
that's a very good question. Yes and no. There you go.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of aspects to it. There's also the I call it the Tom Hanks Green Mile problem, where you have to watch everyone. So that's a whole. I originally was more on the no. That just after life should only be so long, and after that, it's just going to be kind of like weird. But then I just, I don't know. I just kind of thought about the amount of knowledge, and I don't know. There's so many books and movies and all that stuff. There's enough. I don't know. There's enough stuff that you could,
Well, more time to make change too.
Well, that too. Yeah, that too. And of course, material goods would mean nothing to someone who's immortal. So it'll be all about knowledge and personal connections. And I think an infinite life of knowledge and personal connections where materialism doesn't matter sounds honestly a little bit like heaven to me, but the actualities of being immortal would probably suck.
Probably because you'd sit and watch everybody else die.
Yeah, you can never get like super close. And I mean, there's like myths about these kind of things too, where eventually the person just they're kind to everyone, but they don't. I don't know. They reach a certain level of detachment that is often talked about in a lot of spiritual areas of reaching. Mm-hmm. I don't know. For lack of better wording, a oneness. So maybe with enough being immortal, you obviously have just about infinite time. So I think with enough time, you could get yourself to a place where you could be comfortable being eternal.
But then that would change with everything changing around you.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, of course, everything's open to change, but then you have the question, well, are you there after every other human is extinct and you're the last person on Earth? What happens when the sun blows up? Are you still there? Anyway.
And then if the tree falls in the woods, do you hear it?
Exactly. All right, like I said, that was a bit of a short one. So would you mind, you want to pick one more for me?
3.
How will the human species go extinct?
Idiocracy.
It's kind of funny. I got kind of a similar answer from the last person I asked that to. So you think it'll just, you think we'll destroy ourselves before any external thing happens to us?
Yeah, I think selfishness, greed, you know what I mean?
Egocentrism.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of syllables for first grade teacher. Yeah, I think it will ultimately wear down and destroy it.
Okay, so you think that'll happen before, some
aliens?
Well, I think the most likely near-term destruction that wouldn't happen via humanity would be like if some meteor happened to hit us or something like that, some extremely black swan event. But in general,
Like COVID?
no, that didn't even, I mean, that was, I mean, even if we had like a real, not to downplay COVID, but if we had a really deadly plague, that wouldn't kill us. It would, even if it wiped out only 75%, we would bounce back probably stronger than ever. I'm not trying to be Thanos over here, but you know what but you know, it wouldn't extinct us, you know, things that extinct humanity, it has to go like, I don't know, like it has to totally destroy the climate or make it unlivable, because as long as humans remain, we'll always, you know, come back. And although the other argument I got is that we will just evolve. Basically, humans will evolve into something that are no longer humans, and that's how humans will no longer exist.
Mm.
So, but I think most people agree with you. It's most likely that we destroy ourselves.
Well, and then I think about the whole meteor thing. I would find it kind of comforting to know that like everybody was gone at the same time. You wouldn't have to miss, you wouldn't have to grieve because y'all are gone.
Would you want them to tell us the meteor is coming?
With my personality and the way I'm wired, I would like a window. I would like to know it's between so I could prepare what I felt I needed to prepare before the possibility was coming. So if you said it's going to happen in March, just tell me in January so I can fulfill what I feel like I need to fulfill. And then when it happens, it happens.
But that sounds like it's going to be 3 months of the purge.
Well, you didn't say everyone would know. You asked if I wanted
Okay,
to.
all right. Let me rephrase that. Should they blast it on the news that this thing's going to hit in a week and we're all?
Oh God, no! It just needs to happen.
Okay, all right. That was my question.
No, take them out. Move on. No, if I got to know and only me.
Okay, yeah, but you wouldn't want everyone to know that it was coming.
No, just me.
Oh, that would be, yeah. Like I said, that would just be
that would just make it go faster, and you wouldn't have to wait for the meteor.
Reminds me a little bit of the now I'm thinking of the Simpsons movie of all things. Anyway, I want to wrap up here because I know you have some exciting stuff to get back to.
I do. Make some copies.
I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time out on a working Saturday. I know what it feels like.
I was not sure about this. I did not know how it was going to go, but it went very well. I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm glad. And, you know, I think hopefully this will, you know, I like to get the perspective of people who actually know what they're talking about, but, you know, so hopefully maybe this will open an eye or two, and maybe we'll see some people, a few more people not blaming teachers and giving them the credit they deserve. Even if we just convince a couple people, I'd say we did a good job here.
Even if you just convince one person of anything, it's a start.
Well, I thought it was generally informative and just entertaining in general. I think it's an interesting conversation, just education and, you know, what are the pitfalls we're facing and stuff from someone who actually has seen it change over 25 years. And then I also kind of I'm hoping to get some of my fraternity brothers who have been teaching like maybe just 2-3 years and maybe get their perspective to compare and contrast as someone who hasn't necessarily seen everything that you've seen.
Right.
But then they've also, you know, they went through the education system that you taught. They saw it from the student perspective. So that might be an interesting.
And what I hear is you old.
Well, no. But like, so you've done 25 years of teaching, and then he's done a couple years of teaching, but he also spent a lot of time learning in that teaching environment that you didn't. Okay, you understand what I'm saying.
I gotcha.
Anyway, I do appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate the conversation and the insights, and I appreciate your courage. Right, anyway, we will obviously we'll talk plenty about personal stuff that I'm not going to air on the podcast here, but once again, thank you to Miss Keri Gregory, teaching powerhouse, educational
I don't know about that, but I try. That's all I can say. I try.
Well, I mean, that's really all we can ask of you, and you do that. So, all right. Thank you so much. This has been another episode of DP2 the Brain, and This is Mrs. Keri Gregory. Would you like to maybe put out one last thought to the people?
There are tons of careers out there, but teachers teach them all. Be kind to us, please.
Very nice to end it on. All right. Thank you so much. And make sure you tune in to DP to the Brain for continued interesting discussions with knowledgeable people. Thank you all for listening.